So this is our website so far, and we've got the breaking point at 480. So sometimes you might want to have another breaking point for maybe a mobile device, a tablet, or something like that. So you might want to have, for a slightly bigger screen, another breaking point. So maybe where the menu gets positioned and so on. So let's take a look at this and add in another breaking point. And this is going to be done the same way as we added in our first one, where we had our min width of our media screen. So I'm going to just copy this part out here and add that in just underneath. And for this time, let's set our breaking point at 720. So this would be more designed along the lines of our size maybe could be like a tablet or something like that. So we have the ability to add in different colors and changes as well. So let's go down here, and maybe I want to get rid of this 45%, this float right, and I want to add that in over here. So let's do it this way, and let's see what happens now. Whenever we hit the breaking point, this is where it's going to readjust at that 700 point. So anything less than 700, and then whenever we get over that breaking point of 720, we see that now it's taking up that full size up until that point, and then whenever we hit 720, it takes up less space. So we see here that we've got this this float right, but now one of the things that we need to do as well is to update this one over here as well to coincide, because now that I've moved it out of that floating area, we need to keep it consistent, because that's where we've got this overflow of the two different elements. So now when I shrink it down, I can see that I'm presenting it much better, in a much better fashion. And this text align right, it doesn't look right either. So maybe we can do text align center. And again, depending on what your design is, you might want to have something different for these different breaking points and so on. So this is what we've got right now on the different breaking points. We're still keeping our company information here at the top and our text. So let's work on that a little bit and apply some styling to that to make that look a little bit more presentable. And I also want to add in a margin at the bottom of that entire header. So let's update that, because that doesn't look exactly right either right now. So let's do header, and just going to add in margin at the bottom. So margin bottom, and let's do 45 pixels at the bottom. So let's see what this looks like now. So that's not the right screen size. So let's jump over to this example, and we can see that back into our code, we see that it's actually not moving any of that down. And that's because we've got it floating. So in order to create that spacing below it, probably should add it up here in the top in the other media screen. So we see that now whenever I add that in, it creates the spacing, and it's actually giving us that spacing that we needed for our menu. So that's a little bit of a trick there. When I refresh this, now it's spaced out a little bit better. See there, it's added in our margin at the bottom, and this is actually going to work and look a lot better, presented a lot better. That will be moving that content down. And of course, whenever we get it to the larger size, we don't have to worry about the margins anymore, because there is that spacing already built in. And if we did want to have spacing between the logo area and the main content area, we could add that in as well. Let's jump back into our CSS, update some of that logo. So we had given an ID, or we had just called it header and company information. So let's access that one there and add some styling to it. And we can do this here at the top, because we're not actually being very specific. We want to have that same maybe padding and styling information around there as we do. So let's take the main container, the parent is header, and then we're going to select that div that's under there and now add in some padding around there. So maybe 10 pixels. And I should get this one back up. So now we can see a little bit more of what's happening. And of course, this is being applied to any size because this is any size. We're going to apply that same styling. And this is where you would apply colors and so on, depending on how you want it to look. This is where you could apply all of that information. So we could also be more specific on how much line height we have on the H1 and so on. And this is where we'd add in all of that information. So I don't like the fact that the small text, there's that much spacing. So I know this is a default here. So we might want to adjust that as well. And we want to have maybe a little bit less spacing. So maybe we want to be really specific on those H1s. So maybe I could just go H1s and I could so we could bring it in a little bit tighter. We could do something like line. So line height would allow us to specify the height of the line that's available. So we see the bigger the line height, the more the spacing gets created there. So we could just move it to whatever we want it to look like. So we can really shrink it down there and make it look exactly the way that we want to present it to users. So when I refresh this, this looks a little bit more better and presented. Got a little bit of spacing there on the left-hand side. So in the next lesson, we're going to continue to work on this and get it to look more like what our content is being presented. So we notice here that our main wrapper area here for the two columns, this is smaller, the footer's smaller. So that's something that we need to add in on the next lesson and then to really get it to look and present in the way that we've outlined it in the beginning. So a lot of that is coming up in the next section.